Hi, everybody. So today we're going to complete the Chapter 6, Part 1 practice test. This is going to work the same way as all the other practice tests. You are going to be writing down all your work on a piece of paper because you will then submit this piece of paper to the Google Classroom with all your work on it. How it's going to work, I'm going to read you the question. You're going to go through, you're going to pick an answer. Then you are going to pick up a different correcting pen and you're going to correct your work as I go through each problem. Okay. And reminder, this looks very similar to the actual test you will be taking. So make sure that you are taking good notes. Okay, so number 1, I want you to match each percent with the corresponding decimal. So over in Edpuzzle, you should pick what decimal goes with number 1, what decimal goes with number 2, and what decimal goes with number 3. Okay, ready, set, go. Okay, you should have picked which decimal goes with which. So just a reminder, a rule for turning percents to decimals. Well, you can either divide by 100 or move the decimal point two places to the left. Okay, so let's remove that, 0.6. We go to the decimal point. We go to the left. There's nothing there, so we put a 0. So the first one's going to be 0.006, and that's going to match up with C. And then number 2, 6%. The decimal point always goes after the whole number, and then we go to the left. There's no number there, so we put a 0. That's going to equal 0.06. That's going to match up with A. And then finally, 60%, decimal point goes there. We go to the left, and that's going to be 0.60, which matches up with B. So 1 should be C, 2 should be A, and 3 should be B. All right. Okay, number 2, which of the following is not another way of expressing 66 over 100? So pick which one you think is not a way of expressing 66 over 100. Okay, you should have picked a letter. So let's go through each of them. 33 over 50. So to see if that works, I'm going to reduce the fraction 66 over 100. I know I can divide the top and the bottom by 2, and that'll give me 33 over 50, which is the same. So therefore, I know A is a way of expressing 66 over 100. So check, I know that that one's fine. 66%. So let's do 66 over 100. If you divide this in your calculator, you go 66 divided by 100, you will get 0.66, okay? Which, if you look down here, that's D. So we know D works. Then if you want to turn this to a percent, remember, you're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So that's going to give you 66%. So we know 66% works. 0.066, well, since we know that this decimal works right here, 0.66, I know that C is not another way of expressing 66 over 100. So your answer should be C. Okay, number 3, order the values from least to greatest. Remember, you need to make sure they're all in the same form and then order them least to greatest. Okay, go ahead and pick your answer. Okay, you should have picked your answer. So for this one, I am going to put them all into decimals. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 9 divided by 25 because that's how I'm going to get the decimal. 9 divided by 25. That's going to give me 0.36. 0.37 is fine. It's already in a decimal. And then 3.8%, well, to turn that into a decimal, we're going to go to the left twice. To the left. Put a 0 there. That's going to be 0.038. Make sure you don't confuse that with 0.38. There's that 0 there. Okay. So now let's order them from least to greatest. Well, you want to go to each place value. There's a 0 there, 0 there, 0 there. Okay. Let's check the next one. 3, 3, 0. 0 is the lowest number. So therefore, that is going to be the least value. Then check the next one, 6. 6 is the second lowest, so it's going to be 0.36, and then the greatest is 0.37. So it should have went C, A, B. That is your order from least to greatest for those. All right. Okay, number 4. What number is 60% of 25? So I'll show you it. Well, first, you can solve it either using percent proportion or percent equation. So pick your answer. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do it both ways. Percent proportion. So remember, percent proportion is part over whole equals percent over 100. So right now, I know this is the percent. So I'm going to fill that in. It's going to be 60 over 100 here. And then what number is 60% of? Remember, of is our key word. That signifies the whole. So that means our whole is 25. So I'm going to put 25 there. And then for the part, I'm going to write P. You can pick whatever variable. You could do X. I'm just going to do P because that stands for part. So then to solve the percent proportion, I'm going to do cross product, remember? So I'm going to have 100P equals 25 times 60. All right, and 25 times 60 is going to give me 1,500. And then to solve for P, we have to divide both sides by 100. Okay, and that's going to give me P equals 15. So I know that my part is 15. Okay. If you did the percent equation, remember, it's part equals percent as a decimal times whole. So part would be P equals percent as a decimal. So remember, 60% equals, if you do 60 divided by 100 in your calculator, that's going to give you 0.6. So it's going to be 0.6 times the whole, which is 25. You do that in your calculator, 0.6 times 25. That's going to give you 15 as well. So either way, you can get the answer, and you should have got 15. Okay, let's move on to number 5. 140% of what number is 42? So go ahead and solve that. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys the answer using percent proportion. So remember, it's part over whole equals percent over 100. So the percent is obviously the one with the percent symbol. So we are going to put 140 here over 100 equals. And then of what number? So I don't know my whole. The whole is a question mark. Then remember, is typically signifies part, okay? So 42 is my part. Whole, I don't know, so I'm going to write a W. Then we do cross product to solve. So I'm going to have 140 times W equals 42 times 100. Then I do 42 times 100, and I get 4,200 equals 140W. Divide it by 140 to solve for W. And I get 30 for my whole. So my whole is 30. So notice, because it's 140%, okay, your whole is going to actually be smaller than your part. And that's because, think about it, if the percent is bigger than the whole, it's obviously the part is going to also be bigger than the whole. Okay, so you should have got W equals 30 for that one. Let's move on to 6. 11 is what percent of 55? Again, let's do percent proportion. So solve it yourself first. Now let's do percent proportion. Part over whole equals percent over 100. We're not given a percent, so the percent is going to be X. 11 is, so remember the is signifies the part, and the of represents the whole. So we're going to have 11 as the part, 55 as the whole. Percent is X because we don't know what it is. And then we're going to do cross product. So 55X equals 11 times 100. So 55X equals 11 times 100. That's going to give me 1100. Divide by 55 on both sides to solve for X. And that's going to give you 20%, because remember, it's a percent. So X, 11 is 20% of 55. So your percent is 20%. Okay. So let's move on to number 7. 48 is 20% of what number? This one time it wants you to use percent equation. So remember the percent equation. So solve it first, then we'll go over it. So remember the percent equation is part equals percent. And remember, as a decimal times the whole. Okay? So let's read this. 48 is 20% of what number? So that means we are looking for the whole. We don't know what the whole is, okay? So that means 48 is the part. So I'm going to write 48. My percent is 20%, but we don't just write it as 20%. We have to write it as a decimal. So you can divide it by 100 to get that decimal. You should get 0.20. So I'm going to do 0.20 times my whole. I'm just going to represent it with a W. That'll be my variable. So now to solve for that W, I'm going to divide both sides by 0.2, and I'm going to get W equals, in my calculator, 48 divided by 0.20. That's going to give me 240. So my whole is 240, okay? And we got that using the percent equation. All right, let's move on. Number 8. The winner of a basketball contest is the individual who scores the highest percentage of free throws. The top 3 finishers are contestants A, B, and C. Contestant A made 92% of her free throws. Contestant B made 22 out of 25 of his free throws. And contestant C made 0.89 of his free throws. Which inequality represents the possible percentages in decimal form of free throws made by other contestants, so not them, in the competition? Assume there are no ties. And another thing I'm going to point out, remember that these individuals, they scored the highest among all the contestants. They were the highest. And you want to graph the inequality of the other contestants. So pick which one you think it is. Okay, so to start off with, I want to figure out, so A is 92%, which if we turn that into a decimal, it's going to be to the left. So it's going to be 0.92. Contestant B is made 22 over 25. So let's just divide that in our calculator. 22 divided by 25, that is 0.88. And then contestant C made 0.89. So what we want to figure out, these are the highest scores. So what is the lowest of these highest scores? B, it's 0.88, which that means that everybody else's score is going to be less than. So we want to look at, where is it graphed at 0.88? Well, all of them. But this one is going greater than, which I know it's not greater than because these are the winners. All the other contestants are less than 0.88. So if I look at B, it is going less than. Let's look at C. C is 0.88 to 0.92. That would represent the A, B, and C contestants, but we don't want that. We want the other contestants. So that is going to be represented by graph B. Okay? And notice it's an open circle because there's no ties, and contestant B scored 0.88. So everybody else has to be less than that. Okay? All right, number 9, a police officer records the speeds of the vehicles on the road. What percent of the vehicles were traveling between 41 and 45 miles per hour? So you are going to want to find what percent of the vehicles were traveling between 41 and 45 miles per hour. So pick your answer. Okay, to do this, I want to look at this segment right here. So the number of vehicles were 14. Okay, so 14 vehicles out of how many vehicles? So we need to count. So I'm going to add all of these together. Add them all together. So I'm going to do 2 plus 14 plus 18 plus 12 plus 4. That's going to give me 50. And then in my calculator, I'm just going to do 14 divided by 50 because that's going to give me the decimal, 0.28. Then to turn this into a percent, you can either times it by 100 on your calculator, or you can move the decimal point to the right, and that'll give you 28%. So that tells you that the vehicles that were traveling within 41 to 45 miles per hour, the 14 of them, represents 28% of all of the vehicles. Okay? And let's move on to 10. At a restaurant, your bill has a food total of $65.50. Find the amount of a 20% tip on the food total. I recommend using the percent equation. So go ahead, pick your answer. Okay, so the tip is going to be represented by the part, okay, equals the percent you want to tip as a decimal. Remember? times the whole, which this is going to be the food bill. Okay. So we know that the whole food total was $65.50. So the tip we don't know. That's what we're trying to solve. The percent is 20%, but we need to write it as a decimal. So we're going to divide it by 100, and that's going to give us 0.20. So 0.20 times the whole, which is 65.50. To find the tip, we just multiply those together, 0.20 times 65.50, and that'll give me $13.10. So that is how much I would tip by using the percent equation. Okay, so those are the 10 questions of your practice test. Make sure you have this all written down. And now what you're going to do is you're going to take a picture, submit it onto the Google Classroom, and then you should be ready for the quiz. All right, thanks for watching.